Good morning from the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. I'm disappointed I cannot join you today in the Palais, but honored to have been asked to make this intervention. I'm Ray Pilcher. I'm the chair of the group of experts on coal mine methane and just transition, and over the next few minutes, I'll present a few ideas related to the use of the UNRMS and the UNFC for your consideration as a tool for planning and actions are taken to prepare or adjust to transitions in the energy minerals economy. It also helps us to better understand the changes that will impact our neighbors throughout the UNECE region. I want to begin by discussing an important aspect of work done by the World Bank over the last few decades. They recognized and documented the essential issues encountered when planning for a just and equitable transition. As you can see from this diagram, there are three essential pillars: the institutional governance, people and communities, and environmental reclamation and repurposing of land and assets. Along the left-hand side of the diagram, you can see it divided into phases, beginning with the pre-closure planning and extending through regional transition that may take up to 10 years from the time that the transition begins. On the right-hand side, you can see the kinds of financial support that might be expected while this transition is experienced. This is a useful construct that allows for the formalized examination of the process and to begin planning. Let's turn now from the framework developed by the World Bank to one developed by the UNECE. The expert group on resource management developed the UNFC. Members of the EGRM are very familiar with the UNFC and its application to various resources. When we talk about energy transition, however, at the heart of these transitions is the question of what comes next and how we get there. Oftentimes, what comes next is what's at hand. For various reasons, there is a period of foreshortened time where the consideration of closing a mine and the time that it gets closed is very short. So it's helpful to have tools to be able to examine various scenarios and options. The key point I'd like to make here is that through its depiction of the three axes, which incorporate the environmental and socioeconomic aspect, the technical feasibility, and the degree of confidence that a practitioner has relative to his forecast and projections, is all incorporated into this scheme. This tool lends itself to scenario planning and examination of various impacts that might be encountered in transition. Another way to look at these axes is to imagine each of them as a vector indicating the degree of risk. So inherently, a project in the far lower right-hand corner of the cube, designated as 314, is riskier than a project in the upper left-hand corner of the cube, a 111 designation. This allows us to be able to examine projects either singly or as a portfolio, which will determine potentially some of the outcome of a transition. We can also use the UNFC to examine coal and coal-located resources in a prospective area. We can determine what the implications are of developing a project that requires additional data. So as an example, we may be looking at coal, but if it's in a gassy coal basin, we also have to look at the amount of gas. So we have to collect that data as we go through exploration and development. However, if we tweak that idea even further, we could be collecting additional data. This could be about other resources that are co-located. This could be rare earths, it could be critical raw materials, it could be water. It could simply be the space and land that this facility occupies. In the extraction and processing phase of development, we might be considering what kinds of infrastructure has to be developed. And could that infrastructure be multi-purpose? Could we add additional circuits to recover rare earths or CRMs? And then finally, at closure, we could have been, if we'd been doing this properly, planning periodically so that as conditions change, we're adapting and adopting the right processes and the right skills that are needed as each phase comes about. On this slide, I've depicted a project and the issues that must be considered as you move forward at the end of life at a coal mine. In this one, I looked at what would happen with all of the resources involved. That means the human resources as well as the mineral resources. And you can see that white block in the middle actually details some of the processes that would have to be understood and undertaken during the end of life in a coal mine. And in the right-hand corner, there is a block, which you can't see because of my head that's there right now. It actually shows some opportunities that might be available as this mine closes. I encourage you to look at this PowerPoint presentation once it's up on the web and be able to examine some of the details later. But the point here is that this kind of planning is made easier if you use the UNFC within the UNRMS scheme. So when we talk about attaining SDGs, you can't take a better example than looking at what happens at transition. Because at that point, many of the things that we've come to depend on due to that coal mine or that coal-fired power plant existing may actually no longer exist. And so the SDGs such as available clean energy resources or good jobs or many of the other SDGs are at risk. So we really need to accomplish our goals and attain those SDGs by looking at them incrementally, project by project, and as a portfolio, and as an aspect of countrywide planning, or maybe even regional planning. So these tools are very powerful and very useful. Well, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I wish I were there so we could have a discussion. I know I went through a lot of ideas very quickly and maybe not so adequately. But I'd appreciate your questions, and you can send them to me or to Michael Drobick at the email address that's provided. In fact, you can send me some answers too. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. That was a very good kickoff on this session about energizing sustainability. We're going to give over to the second speaker, and that's you, Dario.
Thank you. So good morning to everybody, and good afternoon to those who follow us, and good evening to those who follow us online. So I've been tasked to talk about how this expert group and the work of this expert group fits into the wider energy agenda here at the UNECE. We have our superior political body is the Committee on Sustainable Energy, which is the one that I guess all the group of experts reports to, including the EGRM. This group of experts report to, and they will see how that fits into the overall picture about the importance of the work of this group of experts in terms of resources and how those resources fit within the value chain in the energy space. I won't go through all the work that the team has done across the different areas over the last couple of years, notwithstanding the pandemic. But what I would like to hear is to highlight how the work of on critical raw materials and UNFC and UNRMS is intimately linked as well to a number of issues surrounding the energy transition and which we've been looking at and which we're working on with a number of other group of experts. So as you can see, the work of all of our group of experts is seamless. There are many touch points, and actually we are fostering that cross cooperation between different group of experts, because the issues around the energy transition are very complex and very holistic type of issues that need the contribution from a number of different perspectives. You heard before Ray talk about the role of UNFC and UNRMS in the coal, especially in the coal phase down, and the work that the coal mine methane and just transition team is doing. Especially, I think his focus, he wanted to bring our attention to the concept of just transition, especially for in the coal industry, but not only, as we're expanding as well the work of that group towards outside just the coal mining regions, simply because without a just transition, there will not be an energy transition. This is a concept that the Secretary General is very aware of, and everybody of us should be aware of. But how does it fit? I mean, the team is working on what we call the energy resiliency. What is energy resiliency? We will. It's the result of the last 12 to 24 months of issues, of dynamics, of worldwide events that have shaken the world of the energy industry. If you consider that up to 24 months ago, probably the first of the priority and the first and foremost issue around energy was the energy transition, the energy sustainability, the transition towards a sustainable energy system. The last 24 months probably have brought us the importance of a number of other aspects around energy. And what happened? I mean, you can see here in the slide that I don't think we need to go through the details, but all of these, the polycrisis that has actually taken place over the last 24 months, and that some academics are signaling that it will be most likely our new normal, if I can use an old expression, going forward, because of the impacts of climate change, because of the geopolitical instability, and because of the issues as well surrounding some of those issues that we have discussed here, are actually depicting a scenario where energy resiliency is of paramount importance. So what is energy resiliency? Energy resiliency is the capacity to deliver energy at all times at affordable prices to everybody in a sustainable way. So it's the combination of three different aspects around energy. So energy affordability, energy security, let's say, which is linked to the access to energy, and energy sustainability. So there are these three different dimensions around energy are typically setting a trade-off. If you want to attain energy security, it comes sometimes at the expenses of energy sustainability. If you're looking at energy affordability, it comes sometimes at the expense of energy security, for example, or sustainability. It's this trilemma which is actually making the energy transition so complex and so difficult for policymakers to undertake. And this is the focus of our team, our enlarged team, including all the group of experts in the energy space, to work on this energy resiliency, to work on helping member states design the right path to energy resilient systems in the future, by trying to take into considerations the three different aspects around energy, and try to achieve, if you want, in the mathematical terms, the best optimum in these three different equations, in a system of three different equations. Not a simple answer, as you know, but that is our ambition, and that is, I think, that is the aim as well of all the member states, especially, as I said, given the framework that we are in which we are working these days. So the first thing that we did is we put together the work of all the group of experts, whether it's on energy efficiency and different energy production technologies, the EGRM, the work of the EGRM group, together to show how individual efforts, how individual considerations and policy recommendations and work that the individual group of experts do contribute to the overall energy resilience concept. But this is only the first start. We just turned around and looked at what we did and looked at it in a different perspective, looked at part of a much larger endeavor, of a much larger approach, a systemic approach. Energy resilience calls for a systemic approach, for a holistic approach, as opposed to some of the other work that we do, which is very specific and goes straight to the item that we're looking at. But that's only, as I said, it's only the first step. And so we set, with the approval and the support of our committee, as I said, our supreme political body, we set up on a journey to work more, to orient the work of our group of experts towards the concept of energy resilience. And it's our priority number one. As you can see, we have depicted how it all works out theoretically, how resilience is a concept that encompasses the different aspects of the energy value chain. You see on the left-hand side of that square, you see the sustainable resource management and access to critical raw materials, which is the work of this group of experts. You see in the middle technologies, low and zero and negative carbon technologies interplay. By this, we mean how the different energy production technologies mix together to produce an infrastructure of production, of energy production that brings the country, the member states, toward neutrality according to the Paris Agreement. And then finally, on the right-hand side of the slide, you will see that we look at the energy demand and energy efficiency. You know, energy efficiency is the first fuel. We look at, obviously, is linked to the energy demand. Underpinning that is the work that Ray mentioned before on just transition, which takes into consideration economic and social aspects that have to be part of overall discussions or overall considerations, because, as I said, without the buy-in of all the stakeholders and, more importantly, of the impacted segment of populations, there won't be an energy transition. So this is the approach that we have taken and we are taking across the division and in supporting the energy transition. And each group of experts has a role, and this group of experts has a very, very important role. It actually becomes even more critical when we look at priority number 2, which is for us is Central Asia. Central Asia is a very interesting and very topical area of the world because it combines a number of elements of the energy transition. It's an area rich of mineral resources. It's an area rich of fossil fuels, an exporting area of fossil fuels, and it's an area rich of renewable resources as well. It's an area in transition. It's highly developed from an industrial perspective, and at the same time does not have full access to electricity. So it combines a number of aspects of the energy transition, which we think are very interesting, and therefore we are having a holistic look at the region. We're looking at technology, at production, at transition to renewable energy. We're looking at connectivity, either through electric grids or hydrogen pipelines. We're working on we'll come to hydrogen in a minute. But especially, as you can see as well, we're working on supporting the establishment of the next generation of energy experts that will support the transition going forward, because the energy transition is a long-haul endeavor. I mentioned hydrogen. This is our third priority, and how this works as well, this group of experts, we will be working on the application of UNECE to hydrogen. You know, hydrogen is a very strange animal in the energy space because it can play different roles within the energy system. It can be a fuel, can be a means of storage of energy. It's not produced naturally. It can be produced by many different human technologies. So in order to understand clearly what is the role, what could be the role of hydrogen, that hydrogen could play in the energy transition. We decided to give a specific focus on that and start working by classifying, by working a classification of hydrogen, adopting the UNFC classification, so as to kind of surpass the color coding that is accompanying hydrogen today, and have a more scientifically based way of classifying hydrogen as a resource. And finally, you see priority number 4, but it's the accelerated activities on sustainable resource management. I think these 2 days have proven how the work that this group of experts has been doing for the last 30 years is taking a new dimension. It's actually accelerating, it's actually jumping into a new dimension where we need to accelerate, where we need to deployment of it at global level, where we need to deepen the work that we're doing UNFC and UNRMS across the different mineral and energy resources that are out there, and with a particular focus, as I said, on the critical raw materials. Why? Well, because critical raw materials are the elements of the energy security of tomorrow. When we talk about energy security today, we know what we mean by that. Especially here in Europe, we mean the availability of gas or the availability of other sources of fuels for energy, but the availability of critical raw materials will be fundamental for the transition of the energy system tomorrow. So what is today constitutes the energy security element, tomorrow critical raw materials will be for that. And so there is a clear link here across the work of this group of experts, across the 4 priorities that I have mentioned, as I said. Finally, I would like to close with a very nice picture and a call for everybody to participate. I talked about Central Asia. I talked about our 4 priorities. I talked about the focus of our work in terms of energy transition, energy resiliency, hydrogen, sustainable resource management. It will all come, hopefully, together at our planned 3rd Energy Forum in Almaty, which will take place on between the 6th and the 8th of November, 2023, to which I all invite you to participate. We're working on the agenda. We're working on getting there, but it will be our event for this year. Well, hopefully we'll showcase the progress and the work that we have made so far across all of our group of experts, with a particular focus, of course, on the work of this group of experts on the issues around critical raw materials and the sustainable development of mineral resources. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'll be ready to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dario. I think we'll take the questions and discussion at the end, but thank you for bringing in Central Asia into the conversation. As you might have seen in the agenda, actually our next session, starting at 11, is focusing in on Central Asia opportunities and challenges. So stay tuned for that. Before we go to that, I would like to call on Tatiana Aguilar to present to us the critical raw materials risk mapping for global supply chain security and innovation. And Tatiana is the mining and metals manager of the World Economic Forum. Go ahead, Tatiana.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this. And thank you to the UNECE for this opportunity to share with you the progress of this initiative, and not only the progress, but the opportunities that we have to collaborate together in this interesting topic. I'm going to start with this that might sound obvious, and Dario has mentioned before. Yes, we need minerals for the energy transition. And I think this is already a win in the conversation, because maybe 3 years ago, we were still discussing if minerals were needed. And now the conversation has advanced to how we need these minerals to be sourced in order to be able to achieve the energy transition. So this is just to start, and I'm going to touch like some of the points that Dario has mentioned before. What do we mean by the energy transition? And I'm happy to see that we are aligned in this. of course, when talking about energy transition, we are talking about sustainability, but not only a transition to a green energy system. We also believe that the energy system has to meet these other dimensions that Dario mentioned before. So it doesn't matter how green the energy system is if it fails to deliver energy to the many, and if it fails to contribute to the development of the world. So we've been working under this framework, not only to assess the energy transition, but also to continue tracking the performance of the energy system for years. And you might know we have this energy transition index that has helped us also to make some decisions. So I'm happy to see that we are aligned on that definition. And of course, for that energy transition to happen, we have some enablers. And in those enablers, we can see that minerals are there. So what if the needed resources to ensure this transition are not available? And that is the next question that we wanted to answer. We've seen an increasing number of publications acknowledging this role and how the supply and demand might not meet in the future. And some of these organizations might be here and also connected online and participating in this discussion. We have seen the IEA, IRENA, the World Bank, the United Nations talking about the increasing demand of minerals and how we need to increase also the supply of minerals. It might be from mining more or also from like decreasing demand or from another circularity approach, but that has been established already. So acknowledging that these publications are there and that we have information, we saw an opportunity to consolidate and prioritize that information, give attention to the implications of that potential gap. So the question is, so what? Do we need to be talking with the food system? Are they going to be impacted because of the lack of minerals? Is it like, I don't know, the IT people, should they be aware of this potential gap? We believe they do. So we want to also raise awareness about the potential implications of that gap. And we wanted to focus on the risk. And we wanted to approach to this issue in a risk management approach, because we believe that that is going to give us like some empowerment and set us in an action mode. So this is what we've been doing from the World Economic Forum. We started an initiative called Securing Minerals for the Energy Transition that has two objectives. The first one is to identify and characterize the risks emerging from the supply-demand gap of critical minerals and to propose strategies for collective management. And the second objective is to think if there is any opportunity to design a global collaboration platform to monitor those risks, but also to make sure that we have available and sustainable minerals out there to meet the energy transition. What we don't want is that we derail from that energy transition because of the lack of sustainable minerals. So we have advanced this initiative with the collaboration of many organizations. One of those has been the United Nations, but also representatives from IRENA, IEA, the World Bank, IFC, and some other organizations, companies from the private sector, but also not only in the mining and metals space, but also others in energy and chemicals that have been interested in advancing this discussion. So we have advanced with that. I'm going to show you the initial or preliminary results. This is the risk matrix that we've come out, but since this is difficult to read, I also brought this slide that could be easier for us to see. So we have identified some risk already, and we have divided those risks in the political, economic, social, technological, environmental. You could see there some like, if this gap materializes, we're going to see increasing conflict over resources, or we might see increasing geopolitical risk emerging from that gap. We could see increasing prices in new technologies for the energy transition. We could see also a backlash in adopting new technologies, because if this is going to become expensive, then we should go back to others. And of course, we are going to see increasing pressure on the environment. So as I said, having this risks sets us in an action mode. What can we do to overcome these risks? So that is the next stage of this initiative, that we are, of course, inviting some other stakeholders to be with us. And these are just a collections of news from this year, not very recent, all of them, but this is what is happening. So we are already seeing some organizations and some policy regulations coming that might be trying to address these risks, or maybe they are also putting some pressures on those existing risks. Just to say that this is already happening, and that the world is going in that direction. A question in the middle, why are we doing this? For those that don't know us, we are the World Economic Forum, the public-private cooperation organization there. Our mission is to improve the state of the world, and that is pretty ambitious, I know. But we do recognize that no single entity can improve the state of the world on its own. So our purpose is to bring together people to these conversations and try to collaborate. We believe that is a way to advance. So what is next in this initiative? As I mentioned, a call to action. We have identified this risk. We have already sat together with a group of people and minds to think about strategies. The UNECE is there in that conversation as well. We are going to bring to the table some strategies to try to enrich them, then to try to get some other people working together to tackle those risks, and then think about if there's any opportunity of collaboration out there to have another entity, to have no one, like many go-to places in terms of the minerals for the energy transition, but maybe to have just one platform with the collaboration of the many to make sure that we are in the right track for the energy transition. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope you enjoy this presentation and that we have some time for discussion after this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tatiana. And last but not least, we'll hear from Jana Plananska before we'll have a discussion. And I can just mention to you all that there are quite a few participants online as well who are posting comments. So far, no questions, but possibly there'll be questions later in the chat online. So if you wish, you can also join the online, even if you're present in this room, so that you can follow the comments there. Go ahead, Jana.
Thanks a lot, Chair. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and pleasure for me to be here today and to discuss with you on the crucial issue how private sector can help establish sustainable and resilient, safe and stable critical raw material value chains. And it is an honor for us from Norge Mining to be able to share our experience with sustainable resource management with the Committee on Sustainable Energy and the expert group on resource management. So thanks a lot for having us. And just briefly, why we are actually here. So we have all heard, of course, that in order to fulfill the global energy and climate goals, we need to massively step up the production of clean technologies. And the World Bank estimates that by 2050, the demand for critical raw materials will increase by 500%. However, the problem is that current critical raw material value chains are very vulnerable. They are very complex, spread all across the world, yet highly concentrated. And only a handful of countries are dominating global mining and production of critical raw materials. One example for all is China, who is dominating the mining of multiple critical raw materials, but I've just picked out the three: vanadium, phosphate, and titanium, that are actually the deposits that we have in our resources. And the dependence on China grows downstream, with more than 90% of all technology, of all critical raw materials for the clean technologies being processed in China. So of course, this high dependency makes the critical raw material value chains highly vulnerable. And of course, today they are highly unsustainable. Low ESG standards are upheld in many of those countries for the mining and processing. And of course, the continuous transport of the materials all across the world makes it very inefficient and of course highly polluting. So we need to basically diversify especially the supply and processing, the key first steps of the critical raw material value chains from the countries and from the partners that are stable, reliable, and uphold in their practices the highest ESG standards. And an example of such a partner is Norge Mining, which is an Anglo-Norwegian exploration company that was founded in 2018 and has ownership of deposits of more than 70 billion tons of phosphate rock in southwest of Norway, close to Stavanger, as you can see on the map. And basically the resources are the largest phosphate rock deposits in the world, larger than the existing sources known to date. And we can be supplying four actually critical raw material value chain raw materials from the EU CRM list, phosphate and also processing yellow phosphorus, and as I will say later in the presentation, vanadium and titanium. And titanium metal has actually now been reclassified as a strategic raw material within the new EU CRM list, showing the criticality for the high technologies within aerospace and medicine. But of course, phosphate is critical for food security as a constituent component of phosphate fertilizers, and also absolutely critical for green energy transition as a constituent part of lithium-ion batteries for electrolyte or cathode active material within iron phosphate batteries. And vanadium is actually not only absolutely critical for steel industry, but also a state-of-the-art technology within vanadium redox flow batteries. So these are all minerals absolutely critical for sustainable development that we can provide from Norway. We as Norge Mining are adhering to the highest ESG standards from the beginning. First of all, we are located within Norway, which is the country that already upholds one of the highest ESG standards in the world. And a new mining law is being now prepared that is actually going to even increase these minimum required standards that we will, of course, comply with. And from the start, we are upholding the highest standards internally. So first of all, already the exploration was conducted using the newest technologies, trying to avoiding natural and culturally protected areas, and using the newest technologies to limit the impact on land, for example, by combining physical drilling with electromagnetic geological survey and 3D modeling. We are also in active and continuous engagement with local communities. Our chief liaison officer is in daily touch with them, and actually the land, the area where our resources are located is also very low populated. So we are very happy that there is no local resistance. In contrast, local landowners are actually happy that the value of their land will increase through our activities. And we are also very transparent internally with our activities. We are annually publishing a responsible business report that you can all download from our website. And we have also established ESG committee and working group that is spearheading these activities internally. And we also strive for equal representation. The mining activity is now being defined in our pre-feasibility and feasibility studies, and of course should be the least intrusive to environment possible. We have actually, I'm very happy to have the colleague here from World Economic Forum, because we are members of the First Movers Coalition, having committed to green trucking within our operations. We are also going to use renewable energy, which is quite easy in Norway thanks to the green electricity mix. And also we are developing plans how to reuse productively our tailings, either for further productive use or to restore land. And finally, and this I see as a very important step, we are also thinking of going downstream and to verticalize our production and to enter processing, which is one of the key, very important parts of the critical raw material value chains. And most importantly, we want to process yellow phosphorus in Europe in a carbon negative way. And this is important in two ways, because to date, there is no processing facility of yellow phosphorus in Europe. Europe is 100% dependent on imports. So it is important to build this capacity internally. And also the new process that we are going to employ will have as inputs biocoke and green electricity, and as byproducts, green hydrogen, and the CO2 that will be byproduct will be captured and stored in a nearby facility. So as you can see, so private sector, Oh, yes. So private sector is an important actor and actor within CRM value chains, and we will be here. But of course, if all the highest ESG standards are upheld, it can be also a force of good and contribute to sustainable resource management. And I believe that Norge mining is an example, a good example of such a responsible resource management, where we are cognizant of our role for environment and the society from the start. We are upholding the highest standards from our exploration to the planned mining activity. And we also want to go downstream and to process yellow phosphorus in Europe in a carbon negative way. And how the potential of the private sector can be maximized, because of course, this has not been always the case. So first of all, the high standards should be made obligatory within national legislations. And I feel the work of UNECE and the application on UFC, for example, within the proposal to apply it on the European level within the EU CRM Act is one step is a critical step to do that. We also believe that it's important to support mining and processing activity in the countries that uphold these standards, such as within Europe, and this should be further promoted through also financing, especially the planning part, which is very capex intensive, and also fast tracking permitting processes to be able to speed up the transition, because to date it's taking very long. However, fast tracking permitting processes doesn't mean to dilute the ESG standards. On the contrary, we believe that companies that uphold the highest ESG standards, that are the strategic companies, should be given some kind of fast track processes, however, on the condition that the highest ESG standards are upheld. And with that, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much to Jana, and this is excellent timing. Thanks to all the speakers for great presentations and for sticking to time, which actually gives us 10-15 minutes for discussion and questions. Do we have any questions from the audience? We do indeed.
One question first to Norge, and then a general comment, more maybe to Dario. We are talking at the moment of extraction, but we're also talking in the medium term of circular economy and recycling. Is there any plan from the private sector, and especially the extracting mining sector today, to in the future move towards integration and recycling, so that you remain steward of the mineral over the long time? And I just do the short comment next to that. Most of what we heard today is based on supply. I mean, Dario, I think, did mention the importance of working on efficiency, and I would say also on maybe change behavior, if you don't want to call that sobriety, within the UN system. And how does that compare between the drive, the strong drive, legitimate strong drive on the supply, compared to what could be done on the demand side? Thank you.
So thanks a lot for your great question and comment. So of course, we believe in circular economy as well, and it's important to think about all along the value chain, from the mining to processing and to recycling. First of all, now simply there is not enough material to supply to the clean technologies from recycling. So we will need to step up mining, that's for sure. So the supply has to increase in order to be able to later start feeding in the recycling. That being said, of course, with our partners, so all of what we are doing, of course, we cannot be doing on our own. So we are in active discussions with partners from the private and the public sector here in Europe and in other areas where, for example, along, for example, the phosphorus value chain, we are also going further downstream with some actors that are not only thinking about producing materials, but also recycling and closing the loop. So, but of course, for that, partnerships are absolutely critical. And we also feel and see that some support for that, because it's very often going cross legislations, cross country, such partnerships and platforms like this one are critical to start these discussions.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I think we need to have the perspective that we have here at UNECE is not necessarily this perspective that is shared across the world. I mean, here yesterday we had our sister commissions are just here, sitting in here, and they're still in the audience. And in many parts of the world, people are more concerned about access to energy than efficiency on energy, simply because they don't have sufficient energy at affordable prices. Clearly, our region, the UNECE region, has a different set of challenges in the energy transition. I think we are the issue around energy access is not really an issue. I mean, I don't see it does not exist. It does, but it's not an issue as elsewhere. We have an issue with energy poverty, which the poly crisis that I mentioned before has actually exacerbated that situation, which needs to be addressed in a different way. But certainly we have a very important issue about energy efficiency, whether it's in industrial processes. The carbon intensity of our industrial processes is still way too high, or in the individual consumption at the level, for example, of the built environment, in buildings and social infrastructure. And so we have a dedicated group of experts, which is called the Group of Experts on Energy Efficiency, which looks at three main priorities. The first one is efficiency in industrial processes. The second one, as I said, is energy efficiency in the built environment. And the third one is around digitalization, which entails as well the creation of new business models, new ways of looking, the famous demand management systems and that kind of stuff. Simply because, as I said before, energy efficiency is the first fuel, is the low-hanging fruit in our region, in UNECE region, and we've been saying that it's one of the three metrics in the SDG 7. One is the uptake of renewable energy, the other one is the penetration, let's say, or the share of energy efficiency, and the third one is access to energy, and the fourth one is about cooking oil. So for us, the last two are not really relevant, but certainly the uptake of renewable energy and, most importantly, the energy efficiency, as I said, are critical measures. And here there is a lot of work that needs to be done at all levels. And that includes as well, as some of the speakers mentioned, efficiency in the usage of critical raw materials and raw materials overall.
All right, thank you for that. There was another question. I think first it's here and then over there.
Thank you. My question's for Dr. Plananska or anyone else on the committee. You mentioned that all new mining activity will follow the UN SDGs. Does Norge find their economic models and the competitive viability of projects impacted by nations that do not apply the SDGs? And how do you adapt your mining practices to that scenario?
May I just double check to which scenario? Can you repeat the question? I didn't.
You're following the UN SDGs, which is commendable, but many nations don't follow them, so their costs are lower. So how are you remaining competitive?
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. It's a very critical question nowadays. And so we basically, first of all, we believe that if the ESG standards become part of national legislations within the EU, what the EU is proposing within the CRM Act or national legislation, if we were to internalize the externalities, of course, then we would be more than competitive with other competitors from abroad. So first of all, because they are cheaper because they are not following the highest standards, and therefore, but most importantly, nowadays it is no longer about the costs of the mining and the costs of the supply, but the stability of the supply. And we have seen through especially the COVID crisis and then the energy crisis following the invasion of Ukraine, that basically cost is one thing. However, if you cannot supply, if you cannot secure the stability of the supply, then your whole economic system is endangered. So of course, monetarily costs are one thing, which would anyway get matched once all the externalities are internalized. But more importantly, reliability of partners with whom businesses are going to get in collaboration with is going to become and is becoming of a critical importance. Because when we are discussing with our partners in Europe and elsewhere, they are not necessarily asking us about the price. They are asking us, can we provide it when and how quickly and how much? It's all about securing the supplies.
Thank you, Jana. We had a question from WPC, I think.
Edmund Sides, I'm a member of CRISCO and chairperson of PERC. Just a question for Jana, Dr. Plananska. You didn't in your presentation mention any tons or grades, but my question is, which standard is your company using for reporting of mineral resources and mineral reserves?
Thanks so for the question. So I didn't want to go into the technical details, and we are following sustainability standards such as GRE and UNSDGs, and then within the exploration we are partnering with SRK partners and also Bechtel, who are helping us, and we can then continue in discussion. I can provide you the documents if you are interested in.
NFC, or are you using a CRISCO standard?
So I know that this has been, like, we are in touch. UNFC has been offered to us, and we are now deciding which reporting, if CRISCO or UNFC. And I am not involved in the operational decision, but I know the decision is being made right now.
All right, thank you very much. WPC.
Thank you very much. This is really in support of Dario and part of his presentation where he mentioned hydrogen, because it's extremely difficult to do proper life cycle analysis on different technologies when some parts of technologies are so opaque. So a proper definition from a respected body such as this to get rid of the colors of hydrogen and have a proper definition would be welcomed as soon as possible, because there are too many politicians out there that think because you don't produce carbon, you're automatically sustainable, and that's clearly not the case. So thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Okay, we have a question from Germany first. There's someone else on the floor, but we also have a couple of online questions here. So this is apparently a very hot topic and a hot discussion. Go ahead, Anja.
Just one question to Tatiana. You mentioned the criteria for the risk assessment. You are taking 5 different ones. Is there somehow a kind of bridging towards the UNFC from your perspective? And if so, can you share that? And also to Jana, I understand your system is still in an exploration status, right? So that when you foresee to use probably the UNFC, will you also try to use, in addition, this extension to energy efficient usage and how it is developed for the different kind of commodities which might be mined?
So thank you for that question. And the short answer is yes. I think now that we are trying to collaborate with UNECE and UNESCAP, the bridges are there, but now this is the moment where we need to make the bridge happen. So we'll see what comes out from that. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the question. So yes, so we are founded 2018. We are now kind of midway through our scoping study was finished last year. And now we are in the feasibility study, which are exactly the crucial times when all of these processes, even as the gentleman before asked, are being defined, which processes are going to be used. I know that internally in Norway, there is the decision of if UNFC or SRISCO or what reporting mechanisms to do. So like the mining operations is planned to start within 2027, 28. We are trying to speed up as much as possible following the increasing demands in our materials. So, and the feasibility study, pre-feasibility should be finished within the next 12 to 24 months. So in that time frame, we will define all of these processes.
Thank you very much. We'll take one more question from the floor down there, and then I'm going to try to see if I can get one online question in before we wrap up. Go ahead.
I have mine of the One Goal Initiative. This is a question to Tatiana Aguilar. The risks that are listed in your slide, are these risks that would come to be if there is little mining, or are these risks that the mining may face, like hindrances, or are these risks that would arise from mining?
Well, we designed this as a risk management approach, and we wanted to identify the risks emerging from the gap, supply-demand gap of critical minerals. So what happens if we are not able to meet the increase in demand in 2030 or 2040, 2050 first? And the risks also that were coming out from trying to increase the supply so rapidly that we could be doing that in an uncoordinated way. So which other risks are emerging there in that like rapid run to increase the supply? So those are general risks, not only in the mining industry, but in other industries or in general from those two things happening. Later, if we can develop of this, of course, some of the risks are already inherent or directed to the mining operations, like they already exist, pressure on the ecosystem that is already a risk, but there is an increasing risk if we try to do this in an uncoordinated way. So we have been trying to refine this, like with another circle, saying this is not a direct risk, this is an indirect risk, or this is social, but this is also economic. So trying to make it more granular if we want.
Thank you very much. We'll just very, very quickly take one question from online before we end here. There's several good questions. We'll try to do them in writing, but one that we take here for Dario is, in the balance between the search for secondary material sources, anthropogenic, and the maintenance of the exploitation of primary sources, it seems that the cost of mitigation, the impact of waste as secondary sources of resources are not yet well perceived, neither evaluated. Which would be the main drivers and challenges for prioritizing secondary resources by the private sector and policymakers? Brief comment.
Yeah, I think one of the speakers said that there is not enough critical raw materials already mined to guarantee the transition, and therefore it is today. I think there is in order of priorities, we're probably looking at securing that the primary production of those critical raw materials is actually done in a sustainable way, while putting in place the recycling and the reusage and all the aspects, all the principles around the circular economy. We have been working with for example, the Global Battery Alliance in creating a closed loop for lithium, which one is probably one of the most critical, or let's say in time, the most critical of the critical raw materials suddenly. And so that is an example of how the private sector and all the stakeholders involved can be engaged in a profitable way into the system by creating a closed loop system whereby the lithium is actually recuperated by the same manufacturers. Some of the technical modifications that need to be adopted for the batteries, and then the batteries have a second use, because the idea is to go from electrical vehicles to stationary energy storage by involving different stakeholders, not only the car manufacturers, but as well, utilities, for example, or other new actors. The energy transition will create opportunity for new business and new economic actors to come with new business models. And therefore, I think that is as well one of the drivers that will bring the private sector to the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dario. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to the audience for asking questions. And let's do a round of applause.